organized. Actually, there isn't. We're in a cynical sort of way.
Testing. Oh.
Exactly. Sure.
Thanks.
Oh,
Okay. We're going to get started here. We were waiting
Good to
for
see you.
a
Pat,
few
good to see
people
you, I know.
to get here because the traffic has been difficult tonight, I guess, and so out of respect for those who did make it on time, we want to get moving. I'm Dennis Rosenbaum with the Compliance Officer and Community Liaison Team as the COCL. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight to express your views. Before I started, I just wanted to explain how the meeting is run just a little bit. The City of Portland is still engaged in negotiations with the parties regarding amendments to the settlement agreement that would affect community engagement. And so the bottom line there is that, until such time that these amendments are approved, the COAB is still operating under the existing terms of the settlement agreement, which includes the COCL, our group, chairing the COAB. So I'm here tonight just fulfilling that role so the COAB can meet. Officially, my role per the settlement agreement is to preside over the COAB meeting, take and count votes. And so let me just quickly run down the agenda that folks have set up tonight. First, the COAB members and the community at large will have a discussion with Mayor Ted Wheeler. Mayor Wheeler, thank you for being here tonight to join the group. And we welcome you and we look forward to hearing you interact with the community. Then there's going to be a presentation of the community survey results by DHM Research, John Horvath and his team. The annual community survey, for those of you who may not be as familiar with it, is a survey of Portland residents which captures their views about the Portland Police Bureau, and that's required by the settlement agreement as well. Finally, on the agenda, the COAB has a policy recommendation that they want to consider. And so with that, I'm just going to turn it over to the COAB for discussion with the mayor. Philip, if you as the president of the
Yes.
executive.
Thank you. My name is Philip, and I just want to make a quick comment before we pass over to Ted Wheeler. First off, I really want to thank all of the community members for your support of COAB thus far, and all of your support in this journey we've had together. I'm looking for a very in-depth discussion tonight and really getting into the meat of the topics at hand, and that's the goal for this evening. Before we move forward with the agenda, anyone on the COAB team have an issue with agenda item number 4?
Well, there's no one, the COAB has not supported that agenda item being considered. My position is a farce to talk about a community survey and community engagement when the city and the DOJ has abandoned the COAB and has taken, from my viewpoint, steps to ignore community engagement and ignore the community. And so why we're talking about this survey in that context makes no sense to me. And I think it's the COCL's agenda, but it's not the COAB's agenda. And we've asked for it to be removed from the agenda, and I would urge again that it not be considered tonight.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
I'm not
Yes.
I'm not a COAB official COAB member, but as a member of the public.
Use the microphone, ma'am.
Ma'am, this is my TV co-host here, so he makes fun of me, I make fun of him. So I was thinking, as a member of the public, where else can we have contact with these people who've done this survey? I had questions about how it was conducted, the methods, and also we've spent money on this, so I personally would like to hear it. If we can't hear it here, Tom, tonight, and Philip, and I don't know how others feel, is there another venue we could hear about it?
I'm assuming you could just ask them to present it to the public.
Okay.
But this is just an example of, once again, the COCL trying to run the COAB, and you know,
Thanks.
they run us into the ground, so.
Okay, I'm gonna hold on for just a moment. So I'm getting the feel from the room, would we like to go ahead and strike it from the agenda or leave it? I would just, not an official vote, but I just want a general consensus of what we'd like to do with that. Does anybody support Tom's concerns to remove number 4 from the agenda? Can get a show of hands if we could. Well, there's not enough COAB members here on the COAB team. If it's all right, I'd like to go ahead and remove it from the agenda. Yes.
I think there's some people here that don't know who the COAB members are officially, and it would be good for people to introduce themselves. I think that might be worthwhile.
Okay, yes, we will get to that. Perfect. Dennis, do you agree to remove this agenda item?
I'm not going to be part of that. I'm just going to oversee the meeting. I'm not going to vote one way or the other.
Okay.
It's part, all
Then-
I said
Then we'll agree.
is that it's, you know, in part of
COAB
the settlement agreement to paragraph 146.
We'll go to the COAB team then and ask, and then move on to Ted. Tasha?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm introducing.
She's not a voting member.
For introduction, so
I'm
Tasha
sorry.
is a PPB member.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Tasha Hager, the Portland Police Bureau, and the Lieutenant of the Behavioral Health Unit.
Tom Steens, I'm a COAB member, and I just want to offer some perspective. There should be 15 COAB members here tonight, and the reason there are not is somewhat complex, but primarily because the city made a decision 4 or 5 months ago to abandon the COAB and not put in place systems to appoint members for those who left, and in particular, 4 of the 5 commissioners whose members that they appointed resigned have refused to appoint COAB members. So as a result, Philip and I are here tonight. There may be a couple of people live streaming. A couple people are at a CRC meeting, which is conflicting tonight. But the reality is we're down to 7 active members. And I think it's important that the community understand that there's a reason for that, and it's because the city has made a decision to not support the COAB, not reappoint people, not put systems in place. And as you can probably tell, it is frustrating to me, and I think it's frustrating to the community. But so be it. So our terms expire on January 31st, and we've been told that's the end of the COAB.
Could I ask a question of Tom?
Sure.
The quorum is 8. Is that my understanding? If you have 15, the quorum would be 8.
Yeah, that's
So if
right.
you only have 7 members, you can do nothing anyway.
We modified the bylaws, so now it's a simple majority of the current members. So technically tonight, if we had 4 voting members, we could take action.
Okay, thank you.
Right, that's right. Thank you, and thank you for asking that clarifying question. Are you all finished up, Tom?
Yes.
If I can move forward. Okay. My name is Philip J. Wolf. I'm sure you've seen me before. I'm a voting member of COAB. I'm the executive committee chair, also the subcommittee for accountability subcommittee. And I just wanted to make a brief statement before I pass it over to Ted to start off. It's obvious that this city has been uncompliant, out of compliance with the settlement agreement in many factors. I don't want to go in depth tonight about that. We can get to that later on. But we have not been able to do our work because of the city's interference. I feel it's not fair to let the settlement agreement expire on January 31st. I do feel that we need to extend the deadline on that. Who's with me? Show of hands. So people from the city, do you see that? Can you please keep that in mind? So now I'll pass it over to Ted.
I just want to
Oh,
ask
if you-
if we can go around. It says introductions on the agenda, and there's many dedicated people who've been here for a couple of years. People on the co-op, as well as people I know I've seen for a long time and learned from, and there's very important people here. Can we go around like we usually do? Is that okay? No time.
I suppose we can go out around the whole room. Before we do that, I saw somebody, or I would like to make a comment about no crosstalk during this. We've got interpreters, and it really helps if everyone can speak one at a time. Raise your hand so we know who's talking. And I suppose now we can go around and pass the mic around to introduce yourselves. Does anybody want to start? Go ahead.
I'll start. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice, and I'm an activist.
Pat Adams, concerned citizen.
Nancy Newell, I've been here since the beginning of this process. I respect it, and I hope we get really good results.
My name's Iris Kern. I'm a resident of Portland, and I also work for Multnomah County Mental Health, and I've probably been coming to these meetings for about a year.
Dennis Rosenbaum, Coco.
Nicole Grant, Mayor's Office.
It's harder without the microphone. Oh, is this thing working?
Kevin Fitz, Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association. I'm not a member of this. I'm just a disabled community member who's interested in the subject. So.
Lightning with a lightning super watchdog, just a watchdog.
Brian Bueller. I'm a trial attorney with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice.
Mike Schuman, Portland Cop Watch.
Burke Nelson, Mayor's Office.
Philip Chachka, Portland Cop Watch.
Carol Landsman, Portland Cop Watch.
I'm Ann Casper, and I am a member of many things. I've been with the Police Bureau volunteering to help train them since 2006. I just feel like I come to these meetings and I see lots of good friends here. And Tato, the person to my left, wanted me to introduce her. She is from the country, Georgia. She's my neighbor, and I'm bringing her tonight to show how Portland works together in our local government and democracy. Is that okay? Okay.
My name is Bob or Robert West, and I'm from the Police 911.
Mike Bluehair. I'm here representing Film the Police Portland, a grassroots organization dedicated to providing police accountability through filming, because we believe a watch cop is an honest cop.
Ted Wheeler, Mayor.
I'm Doug Brown, a reporter with the Portland Mercury.
Gerald Walker, the CEO for Cascadia Behavioral Health Care.
Sharon Maxwell, past co-op member.
Catherine Smith, concerned citizen.
Beth Epps, representative from the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Council.
I'm Max Bernstein, a reporter for the Oregonian.
John Horvick with DHM Research.
Eddie Szymborski, DHM Research and citizen.
Sean Fields, concerned citizen.
Amy Ruiz of the Cocoa Team.
Michelle Meese, DHM Research.
I'm Mandy Hood. I'm the program support specialist for the COAB and the COCO. And I also have a note from Merla Vianney. She is participating. She's a COAB board member who's participating remotely tonight. So if she has comments, she's going to email them to me, and I will read them to you. And I do have one from her, and she just wanted to let you all know my apologies to community members for missing tonight's meeting. I'm physically sick right now.
Kirk Shepard from Portland Mental Health Providers Unite.
Cody Ridenauer, COAB Office Support Staff.
Back here. Back here. This piece guy.
Sally Newell, concerned citizen.
And
Brayfield, concerned citizen, and one of the citizens who went to the Department of Justice before the settlement agreement, before the case against the city by the, and I've been actively involved ever since.
I'm Kalei Lubin. Since the year 2010, I've been working with Ann Brayfield and my husband Ted Lubin on my left-hand side. What we noticed in 2010 is that the Portland police shot only 6 people in that year, and we wondered why there was not an outcry or a movement to stop the phenomenon of police making a decision in the street to execute people. We're still working. So our first research project was called Shooting the Sick. We're still asking the question, why are we doing it? Number 2, our second research project was about keep notice. In that case, we discovered that both of the black men that were shot in the year 2010 were shot with their hands raised up in the air, which if we were in a war zone would constitute a war crime. So we're talking about human rights violations, civil rights violations, and we are also talking with citizens who are very, very concerned about where goes our democracy.
Ted Lubin, citizen.
Good evening, I'm Adrienne Brown. I'm with the United States Attorney's Office and as one of the lawyers on the monitoring team.
I'm Mary Claire Buckley from the Portland Police Bureau.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we've got we do have one more COAB member who just joined us. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Catherine Gardner, and I'm a COAB member, and our term's almost up, and nothing was really done.
All right, great. So before I pass it off, do you mind if I are there any more changes to the agenda? Nothing further? Okay, so I will pass it over to Ted. You have the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. I wanted to spend, I think, Mr. Chair, I have about an hour, if I understand that.
That's correct.
I'm not
We're
going
flexible.
to speak for more than a couple of minutes, in part because you don't want to hear me talk that long, and in part because I'm losing my voice, for which people will be grateful. I did want to convey my thanks. I have been following this process from a distance since it began a couple of years ago, and I know there's some people in the room who've been with this for years and years and years. I want to thank those of you who have served on the COAB. I know that your terms end at the end of January. I'd hoped to be here in December, and then of course we had the major snow event, then the ice event, then the snow event, followed by 2 ice events, followed by record snow. But I'm thrilled that I was able to be here today. I know many of you around this table. I know that your passions are sincere. I know that you want to do right by people in our community who are amongst the most vulnerable in our community. And I know you take police accountability very seriously. Catherine, what you expressed about nothing having been done for the last 2 years is a common refrain that I've heard, but I want to assure you it's not because of any decision that was made around this table or any lack of effort on your part or any lack or wavering of the passion that you all feel. Otherwise, you wouldn't be spending the time that you've spent around this table. So I want to assure you it has not been for naught. There's an uncertainty right now. Of course, your terms expire at the end of January. We have a new administration in Washington. We have a new mayoral administration, and I will just tell you quite frankly, I'm trying hard at this point to get my feet under me, get caught up, understand the process. But my team and I have been reaching out to others. We've been reaching out to the DOJ, AMAC, the PPA. I would definitely want to hear your opinions either here tonight or individually if it's more comfortable for you to present to me. I want to hear your opinions. I want to make it very clear, despite the uncertainty, despite your terms expiring at the end of the month, this will not be the end of community engagement on this subject. I am highly committed to a continuation of community engagement on this subject, and I want to be very clear on that point. Tonight, I hope to listen more than talk. I want to get your honest feedback. This is your last meeting. This is your chance to really reflect, and I wanted to be here to hear it straight from you. I feel privileged to have this time. I know that time is valuable around this table. I was honored to be asked, and I'm privileged to be here, and I thank you. So with that, I'm here to listen and to learn from your experience. I'll defer to the chair.
I'd like to give the opportunity for the community to comment, and we can set up a queue of people if we want to, who would like to speak. Let's start with community members first, and then we'll go to COAB for our individual comments. Joe, I saw your hand up first. And just try to be mindful. We'll try to loosely keep to the 2-minute, 3-minute, 4-minute rule. We're a little bit flexible, but.
I'm going to try to be very short. One of my New Year's resolutions was patience, and I'm not doing so well with it. With all the mix-up that's going on, Mayor, we need you. We really do. We can fight, we can yell, we can scream, but what's coming down from D.C. is scary. It's not scary so much to a white male, but it's scary to everybody else, even my wife and my grandkids. We need each other. We cannot BS each other. We need you to do something that gives us encouragement. So every time we ask you to do something, we get the feeling that you just talk. And we've had that for 10 years, 12 years. We're into the poverty plan, and we're in a mess. So I'm begging you, I don't do this very often, I'm begging you to understand how serious this stuff is. If we make demands on you, and I know that. I've been thrown out of so many councils, I forgot how many there are now. You could do something very simple. Extend this COAB. Make it work. You got 50 people in this room that I don't get paid for this. I come here because what I said to people before is I still see a light. I'm not sure if it's a train or it's a light of people caring. And that's what I say to you all the time. You have to care. And you can show that you care. Very easy tonight. You can say, this COAB is not going down. I will fight for this. You're the mayor. You can do that. Easy. Just get together with the chairman, get together with Tom, and figure it out. Say, how many people do you need? Okay, you passed the motion. You have a quorum. You have a majority. You can do things. I'm going to extend you. And then we would get encouraged and say, maybe he is on our side. Maybe we can trust him. And you know, I don't trust politicians. I trust what they do. So I'm saying to you, do something simple. Turn around and say whatever you have to say to your council or anybody else or the Department of Justice and say, this COAB is in existence. And we may have to make some modifications, some changes, but it's staying in existence. It's not going out, and this is not the last meeting. If you make this the last meeting, it's just another indicator. You're just like the last one. You're just BSing us. And you're going to have the same problems with the last mayor had. Total disruption, because we can't trust you, and we want and we have to trust you. Because the other guy's worse. The guy in DC is crazy. That's not a laughing matter. He is insane. So we need you. You have to be on the front lines. You and the council. We'll back you up. We'll give you our lives. But we have to trust you. And this is a simple thing you could do. Okay, it's going to stay in existence. How do we do that? Thank you.
Could I
Yeah.
ask one, not necessarily of Mr. Walsh, but as people give me feedback, from my perspective, and I could be wrong, I don't believe that this COAB was particularly effective in terms of achieving its stated objectives. So rather than asking me to extend the COAB, I need to know what didn't work so that if there was an extension of a body like this or this body or some other construct, what do we need to do to actually make it effective? Because my primary objective is to make sure that with the public process, which I'm committed to, and the community engagement, that it actually is effective. I don't want to be sitting here in 2 years, and frankly, I don't have 2 years because I don't think the Department of Justice is that patient. But I don't want to be sitting here having the same conversation in 2 years. So what I really need is specific feedback based on the experience that you've lived in this room for 2 years.
I can answer that for you.
Well,
It's up to the chair.
okay.
Yeah, so I've seen some hands. I see all of you. Let's start over here.
Hi, I'm Carol Lansman. I'm with Portland Cop Watch.
Hi, Carol.
And I guess when I heard what you said, one of my concerns about COAB is that it's been hamstrung from the very beginning by COCO looking over it. And quite truthfully, for example, their travel budget, I was a consultant for 20 years, and I was agog and agag at their travel budget. They don't need that kind of money. They don't need a travel budget. A community group has to have autonomy.
Wow.
Has to have autonomy to run itself. And this group did not. And again, it was hamstrung by a lot of different groups coming in and pulling it in different ways, but mostly COCO. But I have 2 questions for you. You mentioned in community engagement, and that scared me, because my example of community engagement, my experience with community engagement, especially coming from the police department, is one of 2 things. We're going to tell you how it's done, and you're going to nod your heads, or we're going to come to a meeting and ask you for input, but not give you any idea what input might have been. For example, when the police department, police bureau, Portland Police Bureau, went out to seek input on cop cameras, again, as a consultant, I could not believe that the city had not, or the police department had not done a best practices study to share with the people and say, okay, we've looked at 20 of the best systems we think around the country. But no, they came to a meeting and they said, okay, folks, what do you think's good with police cameras? What do you think's bad? Give me a break. I mean, I spend a lot of time researching cop cams, so I might know, but most people, it's like 312 on their list of to-do things. Anyhow, so that's regarding community involvement. I'd like to hear what you want to do about community involvement. And listening to the police department is not. My second question has to do with the police violence this past weekend. The ACLU has said it's terrible. Well, what were their exact words? Wait. Terrible and illegal. No, wrong and illegal. And no matter what others have said, the ACLU says this was a failure. Now, you came out at a podium last week and said you would not tolerate breaking of law or getting on bridges, but it does seem that the police overreacted, hurt people, bruised people. That's not a good start for you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd like to know what you think and what you're going to do about the police response.
Well, first of all, I'm here at your request to speak about the COAB and community engagement. If you'd rather turn it into a town hall, we can talk about this. We can talk about my response to snow plows and everything else. I will answer your first question first. Community engagement for me, I have probably sat on more committees than just about anybody in this room. And I have sat on the kinds of committees that you just described, where I spent months and months and months, and I read thick reports, and at the end of the day, what I was really there for was to rubber stamp somebody else's preordained agenda. That is not community engagement. That's what's called window dressing. I don't appreciate it. I don't like it. I don't like it when people do it to me. I don't do it to other people. It's simply a waste of people's time. And in this day and age, the most valuable resource that people have is time. So community engagement for me means you have a diversity of viewpoints around the table. In fact, if I were creating a committee, I would deliberately pack it with people who I know have very different perspectives, different backgrounds, different histories, traditions, and it's not just about listening, it's about hearing. And hearing to me means that when you come up with whatever the action plan is based on the input, people can look at the action plan and know either where their ideas were taken into account or where they were not taken into account and why. That to me is a healthy and robust community engagement process. I don't know to what to what degree you feel this was a robust community engagement process based on those particular principles or not. With regard to the second issue, with the chair's forbearance, since it is not directly related to this conversation, as I've said many times over the course of the last week, from my perspective, the use of force I saw last Friday, based on what the information I had at that time, it appeared to be appropriate. However, there will be after-action reports. There are complaints that have been filed with the IPR. I've encouraged people to file complaints with the IPR if they believe there was a misuse of force or an overreaction, and I will ultimately be held accountable for those actions. And so I intend to read those reports and listen to what people say. And if people acted beyond bureau policy or procedure, they'll be held accountable for it.
Okay. Yeah, Sherry?
My turn. Just, I'm really disappointed tonight for two things. Sharon Maxwell, past COAB member. The location.
Mike.
Sharon, we need a mic. Sorry, can we get a mic for Sharon? There we go.
The fact that the location for community engagement is just really inappropriate. I drove around for 30 minutes trying to find a parking space to get here to the meeting, and it's not in the community, it's downtown. And the information about the meeting wasn't even posted on the website until yesterday. So how would the community even know to even be here for a last meeting? And that's really symbolic of really kind of what went on the whole time. I was hoping to be able to present my statement before Judge Simons on January 31st because there was supposed to be a public hearing. And as of December, I believe the 13th, the city of Portland, which the whole time has appealed the settlement agreement, has gone to the Ninth Circuit Court to even appeal Judge Simons' handling of this settlement agreement. And Judge Simon is a federal judge, and he put as a stipulation in the agreement that there would be, if the If there was reason for the community and the amicus friends of the court, which is AMA, who we are part of, to come back before him, that we had that right. And the city has blocked that the whole time for the public not to be able to share what we've experienced this whole time. So I'm going to just go through this really quick. It's less than 3 minutes. As a past COAB member, I'm asking for a passage of the motion that seeks to remove Rosenbaum and Watson as lead for this process as COCO and replace them with a court monitor that this process will have a transparency and accountability, to remove the COAB from up under Rosenbaum and realign this group up under Judge Simon so that we will have equal independence and authority to be able to go back, because during the whole time the settlement agreement called out for the COAB to have independence. We did not have independence. We were strong-armed by the COCO and by the city of Portland and other corrupt processes, that asking for that an extra year for every past or current member who seeks to serve continually for a whole nother year, but up under a non-corrupt structure on both sides. Allow the COAB to pick its own chair, that the city will conduct an independent investigation of the hiring process that allowed Rosenbaum to finish. He finished last in the interviews, didn't even make the cut, but he received the contract. That's not okay. I'm making a recommendation also that because the city is at non-compliance, Mayor Wheeler, that you take that seriously to make sure that this process is turned around. I'm requesting testimony from Dr. Haynes, Dr. T. Allen Bethel, and Joanne Hardesty that they were aware of the ordinance that was created by the city to approve the hiring of Rosenbaum and Watson, who didn't even make the cut, and basically agreed for pay for play, which is corruption. That these recommendations presented will regain the trust in the community toward a process for the citizens have observed as being corrupt, that AMA in the city, both sides corrupt, just corruption. It will also allow the process to continue under an independent model that could be duplicated on the national level. It will also allow the community to believe that this process is free from pay-to-play tactics on both sides. In addition, it would allow the new mayor and the council members to carry this momentum forward, because that's what we signed up for, was to have a fair process, to be treated with dignity and respect as volunteer members who were the voice of the community. That was not the case. We were blamed for the process not working, which is unacceptable. We did not have an independent legal representation. When we asked the city, they told us that we could not have legal representation, and the pay-for-play partner, AMA, who had the Department of Justice as their attorney, would not approve legal counsel for the COAB. What is this? This is a craziness. It took the federal deputizing of local officers by former President Kennedy to ensure 2 African-American students were allowed to attend school. Let it be said in the annals of history that the judge, Judge Simons, observed and read, he'll read the facts. He saw he has seen the inconsistencies and made necessary changes so that there's justice, honesty, and improving relationships with the community and the police department. The city auditor has requested that the policy be changed even for her office to be made independent. The same thing that the COAB is asking for from the city's attorney's office. We were told we had to go to the city attorney's office to get legal counsel. What is that? Oh, that is unacceptable. This courageous request was done by the auditor just, 2 weeks ago, to prevent the forced influence by government, the mayor at that time, and the city council members and the city's attorney's office from having influence over her decisions. This model represents the request of the COAB. We're asking for the COAB to have the independence, to have legal council to be able to know how we're to respond on the behalf of the public. I believe we can improve on this effort and create a model that the country can replicate. While a few community members have been chosen to lead, we are all one community. No one is above any. All should have access to the court and United States Civil Rights Departments. Jesus was betrayed, yet he forgave and bare the cost of his friends, and he didn't receive any financial benefit. Equally, it's important to protect citizen volunteers who serve. This national model to be duplicated and studied in order to have a free and independent structure that calms citizens' minds, as Brother Joe over there said. Mind of the government and the community corruption. We can't have this. We wasted all this time being tortured, brutalized by a system that we volunteered for. I'm asking Judge Simon that he would make sure to order that the city is in non-compliance, thereby allowing the new mayor, Ted Wheeler, the opportunity to support both the law enforcement and community through the process of a non-corrupt inherited lens, that the motion be passed that United States federal civil rights attorney to federal Judge Simon to adopt the COAB recommendations and find the city out of compliance. That's what we need to have happen, is that the city is not in compliance. We need to have a court monitor and not someone who did not make the cut, so that we can get this process back on track and respect the volunteers who have given their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, over here in the corner, and then I see you back over here.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? Is this thing on? Okay, good. My name is Kevin Fitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association, and we're particularly interested in the intersection of public policy and folks with serious mental health challenges and their treatment regarding that in public policy and government and police and that sort of thing. To that end, I don't want to go. I have opinions about COAB and but this isn't. But I think moving forward, it's going to be your decision, Mayor Wheeler, to what to do about it. But I do have one constructive suggestion for you on behalf. So just a figure, I was looking at it in December. Roughly 32% of the people who live in Multnomah County were qualified based on their income and disability for Medicaid. 32% of the county of Multnomah County. So what that means for the city of Portland, I'm not exactly sure. But what that tells us, that state of Oregon estimated at the end of the year in 2015, 800,000 Oregonians sought mental health treatment and addiction services. 800,000 people. So the thing that I'm trying, and I was discussing this with Commissioner Udaley last night, what I would like to get a commitment from the city of Portland is the revolution that's taking place in mental health services across the state is to support our initiative for for either a bill or an amendment to a current bill that's going to be heard on last week to promote peer services throughout the coordinated care contract structure across Oregon. So every time you walk in the door and they say you can have a psychiatrist, you can have a case manager, you're also, because Medicaid pays for 60% of that from the feds, right now I think the time to strike, it's innovative. Clackamas County is putting to shame the rest of the state by how many peer services folks they have. We're just asking for your help to ask Christine to get on board saying we support peer services throughout your coordinated care organization for all peers. I got calls from Sarah at Mount Scott and Vahid saying, Kevin, do you have any peers? This guy needs some clothes. He needs to go to food bank. He needs to sign up for food stamps. And I said, we got the money to pay for that, but it's completely siloed in particular organizations, and a lot of them don't work around the clock. So all I'm asking for is the city to make a commitment to support Christine to get on board and ask the health committee, we want you to either make this amendment or put it in a bill form, peer services for all mental health recipients within the city of Portland through your provider structures. So that's what I'm asking for you. You don't have to decide tonight. I can follow up with Nathan or somebody. I want to say Mayor Wheeler came out in Snow Apocalypse 2016 on a snowy Sunday afternoon. met with us in the peer disability community, and it touched my heart. I think he's an extremely earnest and very bright, maybe too bright individual, but I'm forever a Ted groupie and will be. So please let me know what your decision on this, and I will send the documentation to your staff. Thank you.
Kevin, I strongly support peer services. And I was glad that the Unity Center took that seriously when they put that into effect. I know your organization had something to do with that, and it's a best practice. It's proven to be very effective. And if you could give Nick right next to you your contact information, we can continue that conversation. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, I would like to do just a quick check-in with our work so far with Rochelle about what's been happening thus far. So we struck number 4 from the agenda, and Mayor Wheeler requested input from the community about what would be needed for COAB for this body to continue. So that pretty much catches you up from where we've done tonight. And there's more. There's more public comment. If we could get a raise of hands before COAB members. You want to go ahead?
Hi, Pat Adams, citizen. And Ted, I just give you a little description of what I saw when I came to the COAB meetings. First of all, it was about mental health, and it was about how people in trauma are treated by the city people, by police. And this committee was given the charge of bringing that into a compassionate situation, so that these people are treated compassionately. And yet, what I saw is that mental health. It seems to me, we kind of looked at it as there are people with mental health problems, and the truth is we're all in trauma at various times. And I saw the COAB itself. Because they never got any training, I think, in how to form, perform the fundamental stuff that any group gets in business if you want them to produce something valuable. And so all these volunteers with the highest of ideals came together, and of course they had no way to figure out what to do. The other thing is I think that the focus failed to recognize that police who do violence, in my opinion, are in mental health crisis. They are in trauma. That's why people do violence. And yet if we don't look at, here's 2 people in trauma, one of them happens to have a gun, then we really miss the real cause of violence and how we can do that. The other one was, here was the COAB, and here was the city and the police, and here was the community in trauma. So the community in trauma would come to the COAB and say, what are you going to do? And when someone comes in trauma, if I'm looking at someone in trauma, I'm likely to go into trauma. What am I going to do? He's yelling, he's screaming, he's doing, and there was no training on how to de-escalate community members who come with a serious trauma. Right? So COAB was caught, in my opinion, caught in the middle. Right? These people were demanding justice. Nobody was listening. It was pretty tough. Thank you.
Okay, that's good feedback. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And blue shirt walking in the back. Did you want to make a comment? Is that right? I saw your hand up.
There's some issues that I wanted to bring up. Sure. Okay. There's a few things that I wanted to bring up, and one is that the last 2 protests or protest days, people even with mental illness got injured. The Portland police definitely did not follow protocol. They attacked protesters when protesters did nothing wrong except march. And they launched OC gas, and they launched OC gas at a little child and the child's dad when they were trying to get out of the area. And then yesterday they had a protest, and I observed them body slamming a 17-year-old kid and an 18-year-old kid, injuring an 18-year-old. And to me, I think that's totally unacceptable. They arrested 5 people at Pioneer Square, and then they went off and arrested other people in other locations. And the people in Pioneer that were at Pioneer Square, everyone knew there was going to be protests. There'd be 15, 20 minutes, and then they'd disperse and leave. Instead, the police waited and waited, and when it was about to end, that's when the police decided to come in with the riot squad and slam people to the ground. And I don't mean just put them down. I mean pick people up and throw them on the ground. And that is totally unacceptable. You got people that were traumatized by that. You got people downtown with mental illness watching their police force slam people to the ground. There was a lady that was having mental illness issues, and instead of dealing with her, the police dealt with the protesters. And I think that was 100% wrong. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
In the back?
Portland Copwatch. I would like to disagree strongly with you, Mayor, about the fact that this committee didn't do anything. I've been watching them for about a year and a half, and they went through and seriously debated 50 directives, pretty close, on which are the general order, used to be general orders for the police, and they debated them, they talked about them, the police representatives on the board talked about them, and then they voted and they passed them. And that was, I thought, remarkable, because if you would have adopted them, the city, a lot of things would have happened. The city would have been, the police would have been accountable, so that when something went wrong, it wasn't just considering all the circumstances. It would have been, you violated this particular directive, and there's got to be some discipline. Because the current state of affairs is, there is no discipline. The police do what they do, and then they take it up with the union, and they get off, and nothing happens. So the committee set out, and they passed the directives, and they sent them over to the city, and they sent them over to justice, and nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. And so the end result is you have a police department that's simply not accountable. They can do what they feel like. And if the city would just go to council with the 50 directives that they passed and say, we want to pass these, you could change a lot about the police department.
Thank you. And if I
Right.
could just clarify,
If I could,
could I clarify something for the record?
yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I didn't mean to imply that you got nothing done. And if I implied that, I'm sorry. No, I was actually repeating what a member of the COAB had said when we went around and did the introductions. And I'm certainly, I wasn't here, so I don't know, and I respect a different point of view. With regard to being able to reform the police, remember there's a couple different pieces to this. In part, there are things that I can change as the mayor and the police commissioner. There are things that I can change if I can convince the city council or a majority of the city council to vote for a particular change. There is one important authority that I would like to have as mayor that I don't have, and I can't change it except through the collective bargaining process, and that's the ability to be the final say on disciplinary action. And I think you and I may be in agreement on this one. As the police commissioner, I go out and I speak to groups like this, and people ask me, well, why is this police officer or that police officer, they violated this policy or that policy, and they're still on the police force? I don't get the final say. even though I'm held accountable for it as an elected official in this community. And it is unfortunate, in my opinion, you know, and I hope people understand, I'll support the police bureau when I think they deserve support. I will oppose them when I think they've done something wrong. And in this case, I'm opposed to the city commissioners who gave away that authority through the collective bargaining process in past years. I think it was a terrible mistake, and it's one of the things I want to get back through the collective bargaining process. But it's a really hard authority to get back once you've given it up. But I'm determined to try, and I was very transparent about that during my campaign.
So it sounds like they got bullied by the police.
I don't, they got out negotiated.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second before we move on. We've got only an hour to get through this meeting with Mayor Wheeler, and our time is running low. I do really appreciate all of the community input and value that strongly. I would like to pass it back over to COAB members for comment, and once those comments have been made, pass back then to the community. Is that okay with everybody?
Have I not been taking it off?
And COAB members, COAB members, would you like to have any input? You can pass it back to me if not.
Yes.
Okay, Tom, please.
Some of what I'm going to say is a repeat of other comments that have been made, but they're spot on. The COAB was not given the independence. It could not self-govern. It received consistently restrictive legal advice from the city attorney's office. And as a result, the city then, when it saw a community that was upset with how the COAB was being restricted and acted out at some meetings, the city then reacted by shutting the COAB down. And the COAB wanted to meet with community members and work out differences, if there were differences in terms of meetings and style and logistics. And I can say, from having chaired numerous subcommittee meetings and unofficially chaired some later COAB meetings, that although sometimes the discourse was difficult and sometimes it was rude, we got through meetings and we got things done. And between the city and the COCO, they are the ones who, I believe, put the impediments in the way of the COAB working. And I think the COAB could continue to work. And you said earlier we hadn't been effective. I think that we passed 50-some recommendations that have been ignored, as far as I can tell, by the city and the DOJ. And I think if those recommendations were implemented, you would understand that we were very effective in terms of the work that we've been trying to do. There is no reason why the terms of those members of the COAB who want to continue aren't continued, or, beyond the 2 years. The settlement agreement specifically considered that as a possibility, and you, I assume, as commissioner in charge and probably the influential person on this issue at this point, could simply reverse the decision to allow the COAB to expire, allow our terms to be continued, those who want to continue, take steps to renew the organization of the COAB in terms of additional members, allow us to chair ourselves, and we can keep working. I don't think it's a complex issue, except that the city attorney's office and some of the previous commissioners and the previous mayor apparently felt much differently. But we are not beyond a point where we could continue to work. And I think it's fairly simple. If I was the mayor, I could do it in about 10 minutes. But I'm not, so. On a bit broader perspective, briefly, if I may, beyond the problem that there is with disciplining officers, which you and Mike Schumann just had the discussion about, and that is the fact that ultimately arbitrators decide whether discipline is going to stick. A bigger problem, in my estimation, and I think some of the recommendations that COAB has made are highlight that, is that there is an institutional and cultural problem within the police bureau. That you, as commissioner in charge of the police bureau, no other mayor or any other commissioner in charge has ever saw fit to do so, but you could step in and I think, do some things to change that. As a starting point, look at the 50 recommendations that the COAB has passed. They deal with use of force, they deal with biased policing, including racial profiling, and I'll suggest to you that the next high-profile outbreak in the community will be because some African Americans are going to be killed by the police because of racial profiling. Yep. And it may not be on your watch, but I suspect it will be, as the city continues to racially profile. We also passed recommendations to put in place an ongoing comprehensive system for the community to be involved in police accountability. And I would urge you to look at those recommendations. They are thoughtful, they are best practices, they're a product of looking at nationwide systems and ways to involve the community and make the police responsible. And those steps will address issues that the arbitration system may pose problems for, but you can address in other ways. And I would just urge you to do what no other police commissioner in the history of Portland has ever done, because usually it's a hands-off thing until there's a death, and then the mayor steps up and says some things. Mm-hmm. But it needs to happen before that happens. And I would just urge you to do that. And I think a starting point is to look at the recommendations the COAB has made and to continue the COAB.
You have my commitment to look at them. I absolutely will. Thank you.
Okay, Rochelle or Catherine, did either of you want to make a comment? Rochelle, please go ahead.
I just want to echo some of the things that Mr. Stevenson said. He talked about 50 recommendations that we made. Actually, there are 100. There are 50 recommendations about bias-based policing, mental health, and use of force. And there's nearly another 50, I think 47, on the accountability system. I don't know that anybody has looked at any of that. We worked very hard, very hard. We didn't just make up things. We studied what was happening nationally, internationally, read the people who are experts, looked at what was happening locally and in the Northwest, in Seattle in particular, and New Orleans and other places, and put together some very, very thoughtful recommendations. Whether you choose to continue the COAB as it has been or in some other form, it would be very sad for those 100 recommendations not to be looked at seriously. And I implore you, please.
I will make that commitment. I have been the co-author of many thoughtful reports that have gone on the shelf. And that's not fair. It's not fair to bring people together and ask them to do that and then not give a good faith effort to implement those that make the most sense. So you have my commitment to do that.
All right. Rochelle, do you mind if or Catherine, did you want to comment? Okay. So I do just want to make a few comments. I'll try to make it brief. And if, how much time do we have left, Mayor Wheeler?
9 minutes.
Oh.
You know, well, if I could be out of here in 10 minutes, I'm already late for my next appointment, but I think this is important for me to hear from people.
Okay. I'll really try to condense my comments down then.
And maybe I should say this, Mayor Wheeler at portlandoregon.gov is my email, and if people have further thoughts and they'd like to email me, I'm really happy to get your thoughts in writing as well. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So I'd like to talk with you so we can talk directly, If you'll look over here, I'm Philip Wolf. You can look at me. No, you're good. You're good. So what I would like from you is any time you have a discussion with the PPA, with the chief of police, anytime there's any discussion, I really believe that those doors should be open. I do not believe these discussions should be happening behind closed doors. It leads to collusion. And I think that we really need transparency if we're going to rebuild trust in this community. So that's what I'm asking for you, transparency at all times, period. Because right now, trust is fragile. We've had a lot of goings on behind closed doors in the past, and we're fearful of that. And I'm asking you to show us, I'm asking you to include the community first, to think of the community, to think of those who have experienced trauma, those who have negative interactions with the police that have gone awry. With the protests that are occurring now, if I was an officer and I noticed somebody who was escalating, I would work with that person. I might invite somebody who I have an altercation with to go out to coffee. And I have seen just this wall between officers, excessive use of force, escalation tactics. So getting back to COAB, we have worked tremendously hard for 2 years. We have done a lot, and that has caused issues. We've seen a lot of things that we disagree with. We've made recommendations for changes, and the city has after those recommendations were put into place, the city decided to put us on a halt. They put us on a hiatus for 2 months. So people resigned. We didn't have enough people to make quorum. We had 6 seats that were unfilled for 6 months. We were scrambling for people. We needed 8 for a quorum, but we couldn't get 8 people to show up because they had resigned. So we were doing everything that we could to keep this going. And there were shutdowns that happened. In the meeting, we had to cancel meetings. We had removed some of those barriers, and we continued working, and we are asking for extended time. And I understand that you don't have the power to discipline specific police officers in those cases, but I do believe you have the power to influence. And whatever you can do to help COAB continue, this is our last chance. I understand that you are a new mayor, and I'm begging you. I'm begging you to look into it. Please, please. Okay, community members, anyone has? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Ted. Man. First of all, you need to know who you're talking to. I've been to dozens of riots. You do not want Portland to turn into Seattle. Last May Day, 5 officers wounded. I'm a full-time police accountability activist. I actually like some of your cops. I don't want to see them hurt. I don't want to see the public hurt. Your use of tear gas is beyond the pale, and I'll explain to you why. International law says you shouldn't use it in warfare because it's indiscriminate. What you're doing by tear gassing hundreds of people at a time is recruiting. I've had dozens and dozens of people a day coming to me for advice. You don't want me giving dozens and dozens of activists advice. I'm a crazy person, okay? Please stop tear gassing people. I find it laughable that you said you're losing your voice so you don't want to talk when you first sat down here. Try breathing tear gas, man. I threw up twice. I was crawling on my hands and knees the other day. I don't like to feel vulnerable. That puts me in a state of fear and terror. You're terrorizing me, Mr. Mayor. Seriously, please stop. Okay, you have about 1,000 cops. I've seen 6,000 or 8,000 people in marches. Do you actually want to piss off that many people? Please, listen to reason. I was arrested on the 12th of December by RRT squad. The officers calmly walked up to me in riot gear and said, "Mike, you're under arrest." I said, "Officers, can you take my camera?" They politely took my camera. I turned around, put my hands behind my back, and they took me into custody. What I saw happening yesterday, your officers ran up to people in similar situations, grabbed them, and used martial arts to hip throw a woman, a minor girl, onto the ground, and then they used pain compliance. They bent their wrist up, straight vertical after they've thrown them on the ground, multiple people. That is excessive use of force. Like I said, all you're doing with the tear gas is recruit people. If you want to see a massive black block of people fighting your cops in the streets, like it's Seattle, keep up with that tactic. I've lived riots. You don't want them. You think a few bank windows mean something? I don't want people to be hurt. Like I said, I like a lot of your officers, Mr. Mayor. Just think about what I'm saying. I'm angry, I'm a little impassioned, but please just think about it.
Thank you.
I just want to get back to the COAB. I'm Ann Casper, and I've been calling the last mayor's office for 2 years for one question and never got a response back. So I'm happy that your staff is there. Nicole Grant calls back and your other people call, so I'm very happy about that. I think my family's been in Portland for 100 years, so we have a big context, and I think what we're here for is really community. One of the TV camera people did this, one of the directors, so it means community. And those of us looking at the 46 things in the COAB from the last report, 4 of them address, it says here, 4 of them address the way the police should respond to those with a mental health crisis. And my colleague, Jason Renaud, just left. There are a lot of topics here that are really great to talk about. I think we got off topic with what this suit is about. And it was really important we talk about racial justice and excess force. And those of us with mental health issues, I was there in the Matrix, making what the Matrix people are gonna be on the COAB. We weren't savvy enough. We were drowned out. And so, and the PPA, AMAC, and City of Portland, they all have lawyers. Those of us with mental health issues who go through this, who've been, you know us, we're not even allowed to speak. We're not allowed to speak at that. I don't know what's going on. I've been to AMA meetings. I tried to work with everybody, and I don't see that our viewpoints are there. I would like to thank Dan at Copwatch because he is talking about mental health now. Really appreciate that. I think also thinking about around the table, do we have the right people with the right skills? So Amy and Dennis, I forgot, anyway, you guys did a great job at research, but do they have the skills to do facilitation? And so I don't know, do we have enough research? Do we need to look at it in a different way? Do we need different ways to look at this thing? And what I noticed too, and I have noticed improvement in the police since 2006. I really have. And the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Committee, those of us who've been peers on that committee, it's amazing. We get things done, get directives done, and I feel like our voice is really heard, all different kinds of viewpoints, but it works. Hey, Bob, let me talk to him. And I think that's one thing to work, to look at that committee, how it works. And I just also, I invited all the commissioners here today. Is anybody here? I mean, I'll go to City Hall, and the past few years, more than a few years, they say, well, why are you here? Because mental health has nothing to do with City Hall. Go to the county. So this is the kind of reception we've gotten. I guess Udalia's office is talking with people, but again, we don't see anybody here. So that's the first step. And why is there not oversight about why people with mental health issues, and those of us who are leaders, Jason Renaud, Jenny Westberg wrote lots of things. We've been trying to communicate. We don't feel heard. And it makes sense because the topics, I was asked on February 25th, 2016 to come and give a speech about mental health. I brought in Janie Marsh and to help bring it back to mental health topics. And I also, subcommittees I went to in COAB, I don't feel like our voice was heard. So how do we get back to that? I feel personally a really good collaboration with the Behavioral Health Unit, other police. We work well together. Those of us who are mental health advocates, I think we have some work to do. I am honestly just really sad that there's only 4 dedicated recommendations out of 46 having to do with mental health. So let's do better. We can. Let's look at what skills do we have at the table. I also think facilitation is really important, a new style of facilitation. And Mayor Lavani, V, and ran a great meeting last time. And there also, think about trauma. I think everybody in the room, including police, including people watching, traumatized. And how do we get past that? How do we, maybe some deep breaths or something like that? Why are we going to meetings where we all have the same goal? Traumatized. So let's look at that. Can I just recommend everybody just take a deep breath right now to lighten up a little bit? Just take a breathe. We have some skills. Also, I wanted to give you a card. It's a sympathy card because we did have people die with mental health issues. Nobody's marching for us. Nobody's talking about us. I'm in Fred Meyer's, Trader Joe's, different stores, the bank. People don't even know the stories. So please help us get to the table. And I can't imagine how you feel as a new mayor. You have people die within the first 2 weeks on the street.
Within the first 3 days.
3 days. So I want to say thank you so much, and I cannot imagine how you feel. I can't imagine how your staff feels, your own family. It's a lot of stress. So if I can be somebody, I have a lot of skills in mental health. If I can support you and your staff, let me know, and I want to thank you for your work.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
All right. So out of respect for Ted's time, it's already late, so we're going to need to wrap up. Let's pick, there's the person on the phone, V. So she's been raising her hand, and I haven't been able to see that, so I want to give her a brief opportunity to comment, and then we will wrap up. So V, did you have a comment?
No.
Mandy? No, oh, no, okay. All right. So if it's okay with Ted, or do you want to say any closing comments or anything? Anything you want read on before? Anything about what we've said?
I want to thank you very much, and I appreciate the hard work around this table, and I think I have to clarify something. I believe I misunderstood some of the comments that were made at the beginning of the meeting. I believe what I'm hearing is you worked very, very hard on the 46 or 50 or 100 recommendations.
It's not because of lack of effort
Right.
on the part of COAB that
Right.
nothing was done.
It-
It was
you-
because
so
of
you-
the
you've-
city.
Right, so
City.
if I'm hearing you correctly, what I think I'm hearing you say is you actually believe you did really good work, and then the work went nowhere. And, it gets right back to the very first question that was asked about community participation and input. That is a very frustrating place to be in. So I want to make the commitment, number one, I will review each and every one of those recommendations carefully. And, if you could email me and let me know which ones you think are the super important ones, I want to make sure I give those full credence. I heard a couple of people state the need for independent legal counsel. And weirdly enough, we are having this conversation in the context of the auditor. And for me, that was the first thing that I said, yeah, I totally get the importance of that. So I want to take a deeper dive in that. Several of you mentioned training. I totally agree with that. I think in a public environment where you're dealing with lots of different people and lots of different personalities and feelings, it's really important to be able to respond and reflect appropriately in that environment, and that does require a degree of training. The facilitation skills, critical for any public process. We have to have good facilitation skills, and I'm going to give that a full review as well. And then you gave me lots and lots and lots of specific ideas here. This has been a very good use of my time. I hope you feel that it has been a good use of your time, and I thank you for the opportunity. So thank you for having me here. Thank you.
So I want to apologize. I know that everybody wanted a opportunity to make a comment. Please feel free to follow up with our mayor, send him an email, meet with him one-on-one. Thank you so much for being involved. I wish we could have picked his brain for the whole 3 hours, but unfortunately we cannot do that. So thank you for your patience during this time. Yeah, anything?
Thank you for your patience.
All right,
Great.
Ted. I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming, and I really appreciate your time. Yeah, thank you.
Let's take a break.
All right, fuck it, let's break 5 minutes.
our break so we can continue discussion. We'll have more time to socialize and talk with each other after the meeting's over. So if I could get everyone's attention and back to the table. And I did want to make a brief statement before we do continue. So as your chair of COAB and to all the community members, I want to ask each of you individually to please send an email to Ted Wheeler, our new mayor, and let's be on his radar. We want to extend COAB and just send all of your concerns and worries to him and really put pressure on, put the heat on. I don't want us to be ignored. And don't worry about bothering Ted. Maybe you'll have another town hall style discussion, but we really do need to put the pressure on, even if that means using up our last ditch effort. So please do email Ted, all right? So now we'll move it to COAB's floor. If anybody of a COAB member would have something to say.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to extend the COAB's term of those who wish to continue past the current date of January 31st, 2017.
I second the motion. Let's just vote.
Okay, and then I think we'll go ahead and wrap up discussion. All in favor of Catherine's motion?
Aye.
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 Aye. And V, do we have a response from V over the phone? Okay.
If V is a
Seems, well, I wanted to give the DOJ the floor. Adrian Brown, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did.
come up to them.
If you want to go ahead.
Thank you for inviting me to the microphone, Philip. I certainly was planning on providing a comment at the last public comment period. I appreciate you providing me time. We wanted to extend our sincere appreciation to, we being the DOJ, to all of the COAB members, including the police advisors and Lieutenant Hager. I know you're here representing for the Bureau, and so we do ask that you pass this along to your colleagues as well. And for the voting members, we want you to know how much we appreciate the hard work that you have done and all the work, the time that has been involved. I have been involved in this process from the beginning and have been to many of your meetings, and I appreciate the long hours that you have put in. And I know it comes from a place of interest in obviously the volunteer aspect. I think it's important to know that we are committed to continuing this process. For us, this is not ending as of January 31st. We are engaged with the city in the facilitated discussions that they provided in their status report to the court, and we will continue to be engaged in that process. And through that process, we are taking in all the feedback that you all have given us over this time. I know I've met with several of you individually, and I met with many of you as a group, and I can't thank you enough for spending the time to do that, because I think in many ways, you were pioneers for this process, and I think that's probably appropriate for Oregon. And we really do hope that what you have brought forward to us for what can be improved, we can take that forward and make it into a better process going forward. I also want to thank you for your recommendations that you have provided. Those have not been ignored by the Department of Justice to the extent that we have approved policies, which have been few. We have provided public record of that, and want you to know that despite these terms ending on January 31st, that we will continue to take those recommendations as we continue to look at policies. And that's a process that is still going forward. So thank you for that work. I want you to know that doesn't go unnoticed or unappreciated, because I do believe that there was a lot to be done, and a lot was put on your plate. So I really appreciate that aspect of it. My colleague Brian Bueller is here from DC as well, and he was actually here during the last snowstorm when this meeting was postponed, and he came back out for this. So I also want to give Brian a chance to provide any comments to the board.
Is it working? Oh, okay. Yeah. So I know all of you. I met all of you individually, and I want to express my appreciation as well. I know everyone in our office in the Civil Rights Division has a lot of admiration and appreciation for just how many hours you put in and all the work that you've done. We've tried to attend as many meetings as we possibly can as well. As Adrian said, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes the weather gets in the way or other things. But we stand in recognition of just how much you all have done. So I echo everything Adrian said.
If I may, with all due respect, I find your comments hollow, because I think if you meaning the Department of Justice, not you individually, but felt that our work was that important and you appreciated what we've done, you would have filed a motion with the court placing the city in non-compliance for allowing this to happen to the COAB. And you're unwilling to do that, apparently. So what I see from that is you're partners with the city in allowing us to expire. And that, in my mind anyway, undercuts the notion that you, again, not you individually, but you meaning the Department of Justice, really value what we've done, because we could keep doing it, but no one seems to care. So.
And if I may, I understand where that frustration is coming from, definitely. I do want to make sure everyone is aware that we did determine that the city was in non-compliance, not just in this area of the settlement agreement, but in other areas as well. We have not filed a non-compliance motion in any of those areas. And I just want to refer back to the settlement agreement, which requires us to provide the city a chance to remedy their non-compliance prior to any filing of a motion that Mr. Steenson speaks of. And that is essentially where we are at and why we are engaged in the facilitated discussions to try to remedy this area of non-compliance. We do believe that engagement in this area is hopefully going to be more fruitful than contentious litigation. I think everyone in this room would like less lawyers and more input from non-lawyers, and that's what we're attempting to do at this point.
In 2015, the DOJ recognized the city did not have a process in place to replace appointees, for example, like me, in the community at large. So that's been almost a year and a half now. And you've known at least since April that the city made a decision not to appoint members from the council to replace those who had resigned. So now we're talking 8 or 10 months there. And so, again, I'm sorry, the notion that somehow it takes that kind of time to sit down with the city and work something out. I've negotiated a lot of things in my life, and that is nonsensical to me, that if the Department of Justice really cared, that it's let this kind of time pass and allowed the city to get away with it. I'm sorry. I just don't get it.
I appreciate your frustration completely, and what I can say is we really do want this effort to come from something that comes from the city via its relationships with the partners, whether it's community members through the mental health community members through AUMAC. We really want, to the extent possible, for it not to be something that DOJ provides, and instead it come from the community. So that's where we're at right now. But I appreciate that frustration, definitely.
If I could, I would like the floor for a minute. So I apologize for my use of language, but it's been 2 years and we're angry. We've had, 6 months and 40 hours a week working volunteer time. It breaks my heart to see COAB dissolve like this. And the city sent a letter, COAB, saying, oh, thank you so much for your work. Yes, the city had some missteps in some of their work. Missteps? Really? For 8 months now, the city has had every opportunity to replace people. We have talked to them several times, encouraging so, and they have not done it. That needs to be recognized as not compliance, but at the same time, trying to do your work, and I appreciate your service. No, you need to be more blunt about it. Say it's not okay. Hold them accountable. They have to be responsible for the change. In the hearing with Judge Simon, he said, we are not the ones responsible, but we will, or we are somewhat responsible. We will continue to try to improve. There's been aggressive behavior. They're not taking accountability, but they'll say they'll try to help. We need DOJ's support. You can't have one foot in one door and one in the other. It doesn't work that way.
Philip, I hear your pain, and I want you to know that both my feet are in this door right now, and I have all the respect of Mayor Wheeler and his office, but I would ask you to look around and see that despite him having to leave, all his other staff left too. Mary Claire is here as a representative of PPB. I think that should be noted. But I would note that, DOJ is still here. There are very few meetings that we have missed. We have opened up our doors to you to speak with you privately on several occasions. We invited the COAB in to speak with us individually as well as a group. We are both of our feet are fully here and engaged, and will continue to be so.
Rochelle, thank you for your comment.
Wanted to follow up on what Tom and Philip were saying. I appreciate what you're saying, Adrian, that your feet are here, and I've spent some time with you. I know you have a good heart, and I really want to believe all of this, but at the same time, I think that you cannot sit here and say that you know that the city is acting in good faith, because they are not. They are doing everything they can to delay, to use stalling tactics and this facilitated nonsense that you're talking about is just another one of those. They did that in the courtroom with Judge Simon, and one of the city attorneys very coquettishly said, well, what should we do with this problem, Judge? And the judge gave an answer which the city didn't like, and eventually filed a suit saying that the judge was biased, which is the most ridiculous thing that I have ever heard in my life. The city has never agreed that they or the police department did anything wrong, and that's in writing. If they don't agree that they did anything wrong, they certainly don't want to agree to fix whatever it is that they didn't do wrong. So all they're doing is playing with you, playing with us, playing with the good citizens and the taxpayers of the city of Portland. I don't have any authority, but you do. And it would be really nice if you took your 2 feet and stepped forward and did something. I would appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments.
And I see Dan had wanted to say something.
Thank you, Chair Wolf. So I can't, I'm on the steering committee of the AMA Coalition. I can't speak on behalf of them, but I can tell you that this morning or early this afternoon, the coalition sent out a news release urging the city to continue the seated members of the COAB so that there would be some community piece to this settlement agreement. And we haven't gotten a positive response from the city on that. They still have 5 days, I guess, to consider, especially if you're voting. I don't know if V voted yet, but if you're voting that you'd like to continue, I think that shows them that you'd like to.
Yes, sorry, V did vote.
And she said yes.
Yes, excuse me.
All right,
yeah.
so I guess I would say I've heard this idea of getting rid of the 5 current members who are here today and the 7 who are existing as the same as getting rid of the Affordable Care Act with nothing in place to replace it. And I think it would be a good idea to keep you all seated and keep this body meeting and have a conduit for the community until the new board is seated. And if you all have to reapply to get on that board, I think that's fine, but I just think that you need to have continuity up until the point when the new board's ready to roll.
All right, yeah, Joe?
Again, for the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I don't understand something. And I'm an activist for a long time. So if I don't understand it, I don't think the community understands this. The COAB was created as a voice for the community. The COAB had no authority. They recommended stuff. And they sent you guys 100 recommendations. Where did they go? What happened? So they did their job. You charged them, or the judge charged them, or the settlement charged them to do the recommendations and then give them to the COCO. That's the way I read the settlement. Now the COCO said, okay, forget about us, let's go directly to the Department of Justice. So they sent them to you, and you did nothing. You sat on them. So when the criticism comes down, us activists look at, they did their job, you didn't. And my question is, why not?
So if I may answer that question, so I appreciate that that's the appearance, and I appreciate that can cause confusion. As stated in our August 2015 memo, we did want to include, and encourage the city to extend the time frame of the policy review process to allow time for the COAB comments to be considered. Because initially, when that policy review process was initiated, that process, the COAB had not been seated, that process had not started. So our August 2015 memo, which is public, did include time to include the COAB's recommendations. The reason why there has not been more out of the Department of Justice for what has happened in those recommendations is because we have only approved very few policies. The ones that we have approved, for instance, the 850-20 mental health policies, those were our first set of policies that we approved, and we provided an extensive memo which laid out what policies we considered in the COAB review process. And if we didn't include them, if we didn't provide them particular line by line items in the new policies, we provided an explanation as to why. I can tell you right now, with the use of force policies being under review, because I've sat right at table next to my colleague Jonas Geisler, and he has had the COAB website up, looking at all the policies and going down them one by one, and making sure that all those are being considered as we're going through them. But we have not come up with a revised use of force policy. That has not been approved, so we have not spoken publicly on that yet. But I have made an appearance before this board before, last spring, providing this information, and I will continue to say it as much as possible that your recommendations are being considered by DOJ, and to the extent that DOJ is interacting with PPB, I can tell you they are being considered. So that's what I can offer.
You know, if you started the COAB board and you told them in the beginning that you're charged with giving us recommendations, eventually getting to us, and then we're just going to sit on them and do nothing because we're not going to approve them, I don't think anybody would serve on that board. I think you screwed them. I think this thing was designed to fail. You seem to say that the perpetrator, the city, tells you what to do. Or you say to the city, can we do this? Can we be nice? Why can't you go to the city and say, you will keep this COAB board in session, or we're going back to court, and we are going to sue your ass?
So
why can't you do that?
there is a lawsuit in federal court. So we did sue the city in regards to holding them in non-compliance. We did make a finding in our October 2016 status conference that we found them out of compliance, and where we were at, according to the settlement agreement, is in a process of getting their proposal as to how they are going to get into compliance, and that is what we're doing with these facilitated sessions with the AMA.
But they're disbanding the COAB. How in God's name could they be ever in compliance if they disband this body?
We agree, they're not in compliance.
Then
they're
fine them. Do something. You have the authority to do something.
We unfortunately don't have authority to have any monetary remedies under the statute in which they are sued. It's all remedies that require reform and change.
All right, I have one more question and then I'll shut up. Can you go to the judge, Judge Simon, and say the city is out of compliance, we don't get any cooperation from them, we want to go back to trial, we are taking them to trial? Can you do that?
No. So the process that is in place under the settlement agreement is,
I'm not talking about the settlement agreement. I'm saying the settlement agreement is based on the city complying with what the settlement agreement is.
Right.
And they're not in compliance.
So
can you go to the judge and say, let's go to trial?
no. So what the process is what the process is provided for, and what the judge has articulated in both status conferences is that if the city fails to comply with the settlement agreement, we have the option to put the city on notice and to seek an ability through a mediation process to try to come up with a remedy. So the next step in this that's what would happen next, is a mediation. And after that mediation occurs, if there's still not agreement, then Judge Simon would get involved. So where we are at right now is we are working through a facilitation process, which the AMAC and the PPA are involved with, who are the other two parties to the case, to try to establish a way to remedy this without further litigation.
How much time do you have to do that?
So the city's intent, when we first started, was to have it done by January 31st. And that comes right up against as well the other aspects of the settlement agreement, which are being negotiated for amendments under our paragraph 175. And so we are hoping to see this done in the next, it's not going to be done by January 31st. I'm not going to, provide anyone any misinformation on that. But we are looking to have this done in the next couple months. There isn't a particular, the settlement agreement did not provide a particular time frame. I think your point is well taken, Dr. Silver, that the parties must be acting in good faith. And we are at the point where, just given the level of discussion that's going on, and just harkening back to the initial aspect of the settlement agreement, we did not, our constitutional findings in our complaint did not go to the extent of community oversight and engagement. So the fact that the city put that on the table and agreed to that under a settlement agreement started the relationship as one of good faith. That is not something that was required by the complaint filed in federal district court. Where we are at now with the new administration, with the mayor and his efforts to bring in staff beyond the city's attorney's office to participate in these facilitated discussions, right now we don't have any reason to believe that they're not in good faith and continuing to do so. But I appreciate that comment, and that is something that we are definitely sensitive to.
Assuming you reach agreement with the city as to amendments, and I'll just limit it to the COAB piece.
Right.
That has to go to the judge for approval.
Yes.
And at least in my opinion, I may well be wrong, that will be such a substantial change that I think the judge is going to conduct another fairness hearing.
It's quite possible, yes.
Yeah.
And it
So-
also has to go to city council prior to
Yeah.
even going to the judge.
So we're talking half a year, probably?
I would hope,
No.
I really would hope that it's sooner than that, because where we're at in the facilitations and where we're at with the Department of Justice and wanting to continue to move the ball forward, I think Mayor Wheeler was correct when he says we don't have unlimited patience, but at the same time, we don't have, there is no specific time frame required under the settlement agreement for that process.
It's going to be a long time.
Okay, in the back, did I see a hand right back there? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Jan Friedman. I'm with Disability Rights Oregon. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry about this. I kind of think of myself as having such a loud voice, but all right. So I'm with Disability Rights Oregon. I've been there since 1999. We all know, as part of the community, that there's been an issue with trust between the police and particularly people with disabilities. And the reason the Department of Justice stepped in, from my understanding, was there was actually a finding after an investigation that there was an unlawful use of force by the Portland Police Bureau against people who were perceived to have, or in fact did have, mental illness. So that was a very serious problem. And then so then there's a settlement agreement that's sort of like, from what I understand, diversion. And certain things are supposed to happen, and they need to happen, otherwise a lawsuit can happen. And of course, you can mediate before you have the lawsuit. So now I'm here, and I'm feeling sad because we had a COAB as part of this agreement. We had a notion and a reality towards citizen involvement, and that is a key piece, and it's a key piece because we have us and them problem in our community and in the culture that we're part of. So if this COAB and these people, I've come to a few meetings, I haven't been able to make it to tons, but if these very dedicated people who've spent all this time to put forth these recommendations with nothing they've heard back are dropped, I think the trust level plummets. And it's not fair to any of us. It's not fair to people with disabilities. There was like this strong showing that the Department of Justice was going to step in, and we don't expect you to set everything right, but if you say, we're relying on the community to make it right, we can't be a third party, just community, work it out. Why are you here? I mean, there's got to be something more than that. So I think that this is a point where if the COAB is willing to continue, and they should be praised for the amount of time and effort they've put into doing research and figuring out all these thorny issues that are difficult to decide. If they're willing to continue, they sure better be able to continue.
So I am very sorry that there's no one from the city here to hear this, because this is their decision. This was not DOJ's decision. I understand the frustration and I understand the concern that the appearance is, well, DOJ is doing nothing, so we should be lobbed into the city's decision. I want to be firm on this. This is the city's decision to not continue this COAB until the new board is in place, not the DOJ decision. And so we have found them in non-compliance. We have alerted the court they are in non-compliance. We have asked the court to provide a status conference in order to continue this conversation in a public setting before a federal judge. The city appealed that decision. The judge then struck that status conference. So DOJ is standing firm in our finding of non-compliance. We are standing firm in our already agreed upon process under the settlement agreement to engage the city in a process to try to come up with a solution prior to going further into litigation. The city, and you heard it from Ted Wheeler's mouth tonight, he has decided to end this COAB as of January 31st. That is not the DOJ's decision.
So I'll just try to be brief, but I believe that it's the city's decision. I also have noticed, because I've been since 1999 on one of the oversight boards for the Portland Police as to training and like the crisis intervention training. So I've been on that for a long time. Since the US DOJ settlement agreement, there's been a real different atmosphere. Like, we need to comply with that settlement agreement. We're doing this and that to comply with the settlement agreement. I mean, I think they really changed their tune, changed their style, started getting things done because they know you're present. So I'm having a hard time believing that if you put that kind of pressure on them that you did when you came in to Portland and did your investigation and came out with a strong finding, that they would just sit back and say, whatever. I don't think so. So, I mean, I'm not blaming you, and I know that you have a lot of integrity and, you know, are doing the best you can, but like, how about some pressure on the city instead of collaboration with them and allowing the citizens to have a voice because they need it?
We continue to definitely want the community to be involved in this process, and from DC to Portland, we are committed to continuing to make sure that there is community oversight and engagement.
Are you committed to pressure? Are you committed to pressuring them?
I am committed to holding true to what we agreed to under the settlement agreement. What we agreed to under the settlement agreement is to, yes, continue that pressure to insist that they comply with the settlement agreement. Yes, that's the pressure we can put forward at this point.
Okay. With all due respect, the city has been found in non-compliance thus far, and we've been on a 2-month hiatus. I would have thought that you had time to get some creative brainstorming done, but it hasn't been done. And the city has already been found in non-compliance. The settlement agreement, they're not in compliance with that. I think it's fair to ask for an extension. I think that's very fair that we can do the work without the city involved, and that's what we need to be effective, an extension. I think we need to figure out how we can make that a reality, because the city has failed us. Because the city owes us that. People are dying. They're dying in vain because of the non-compliance of the city. And that's been happening, and the city is not supporting any transparency. They're not in support of rebuilding and regaining trust with the community, and everything has gone awry as a result of that. So where can we start? We have to start here, and it has to start with an extension of COAB for continued improvement. It's the city. That's my last comment. Any community comments? Yeah. Charles? Charles?
I've been waiting for help. Yeah. So I just wanted to say to Adrian and to Brian, okay, like what Philip just said, I wanted to reiterate what he was saying. My concern for the community as a person of color, and to follow up with what Jan said, disability rights, who I worked with, my concern is that if there was an agreement, a settlement agreement that was not followed, that the city was to work with the community so that they could have a voice on giving input to improving the conditions for people who have mental health issues, okay, and to reduce the use of force, to improve upon the conditions with the police department. Why not allow the community to continue to have a voice? Who else would be better to give the voice for the community who's suffering, continuing to suffer up to now, as he said. We're continuing to have deaths in the criminal justice system, homeless people. You know, I mean, this is continuing now. So how many more lives have to be lost? How much more time do we have to waste for lives of people here in Oregon and all across the states? And as other states have already settled, you know, why not look at how they settled with input from the community, having a voice, you know. I mean, very little oversight with what's gone on with the city, that they chose not to work with the community for a reason. So now if they choose not to do that and they want to work with certain individuals in the community, how is that fair for other people who have a voice still, who know what, you know, needs to go on to improve the conditions of people here in the community? So if they're out of compliance, why not allow the community to still have a voice so that we can help improve people and save lives? I mean, that makes more sense to me versus wasting another whole year or two waiting for the city to respond for being out of compliance. That doesn't make sense to me.
And we do want to continue to hear from the public, but we also want the city to continue to
But I'm concerned about the lives of people here in Oregon. That's what I'm concerned about. Isn't that more important to save lives? That's my concern. And from the DOJ, I mean, you guys are here, I thought, to protect the communities. So if we're here to protect the communities, we've gone to court, we have an agreement, it's not being followed. So how are we going to continue to protect the community in the meantime? What can we do, you know, expeditiously, not a year or 2 years later, while we continue to lose more lives? That doesn't seem like a very fair process to me.
So I just want to make sure everyone is aware, because I definitely appreciate your comment, that there are additional avenues for making sure that there is information provided to PPB and the community, or via the community, particularly regarding people with mental health issues. And I know Ann Casper mentioned this before, but the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Committee, which Jan Friedman sits on, is a group that has been very interested in these issues.
Which meets privately, I might note.
Yeah.
Right.
They do meet. They do. It's not a public board, and I will say that just having observed them, that was a decision that was made by that board. That board made that decision several times. I will also say that, because I want it to be clear that the settlement agreement is multifaceted, and in an area in which the city is made a lot of strides is with their behavioral health unit and the behavioral health response teams. And so I do want to make sure that it's clear that while DOJ did find the city out of compliance in this area regarding public engagement and community oversight, as well as with accountability, there was a lot of good work that is being done that we did emphasize in regards to saving people's lives. And I don't want that to go unnoticed, that Lieutenant Hager and her behavioral health unit have done some tremendous work in this area.
But the community's voice is still, I just want to make sure that you hear me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm serious about this.
Yes.
With these boards that we've had forever, okay, that limit input, okay. I mean, you have to have input from the community, and we have, but now I'm hearing that needs, they want it to stop or whatever needs to happen. But I'm just saying, having limited input is not good for the community. We need to have a voice, not just certain individuals. We need to have the community's voice on these issues.
Absolutely.
And for it to stop or to be limited, I don't see how that's going to help improve situations.
Understood.
All right, in the corner here. Katie?
The mic. I guess it seems like to me that the city has never really been serious about accountability from the get-go of this. And to find out recently that Judge DeMunis, who was in charge of this, tried to help a state trooper who slapped his kid keep his gun license, which it didn't end up working out, and to try to help him keep his police certification and things. So I'm like, oh, that I'm not even gonna go into that, but that kind of also raises a red flag. But it's been 2 years, and honestly, nothing has happened and nothing has changed. And they've dragged their feet every step of the way at any kind of attempt to have meaningful accountability. And, at some point, it's like they've been given enough chances to fix things, and I don't know what's going to make them, but obviously just doing the same thing isn't. And I would hate to be back here 2 years later and see nothing else has changed at all.
Go ahead.
So, we can't really say for sure how. My name's, by the way, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. And, we don't know exactly how many parallels there are between courtroom antics and chessboard antics. But to think that, some of us don't have the highest opinion of all the city attorney's staff. Some might say clowns. And to think that clowns outmaneuvered Loretta Lynch and the Civil Rights Division, that was kind of the result we would have expected under current Attorney General Jeff Sessions. So, but we would still like the DOJ and the CRD to work with us at keeping people alive, unmurdered by the police, and to give us real facts about the situation on the ground. So like, in a perfect world, it'll only be tomorrow when some unnamed, unknown judges, who's perhaps you can tell us whether the appeal goes to a normal 3-judge panel or a single judge. I'd like to get that particular question answered if you want to jot that down in your notes. They could come down and tell us that the city attorney's frivolous appeal was full of egregious bullshit, because Judge Simon is a fine, upstanding, unbiased judge who's doing what the city should be doing. He's working very hard to keep the police from murdering people such as myself with either apparent or actual mental illness. So once we know which judge or panel of judges is dealing with the city's wackadoodle claim that Judge Simon is not adequate or professional, then we'd also like to hear about the timeline. For example, if the Ninth Circuit were to get a quick dose of lightning expediency and bring that down tomorrow, is it the intention of the Department of Justice team we have here, or with Jonas Geisler, to reapply for an immediate or emergency status hearing? And do you intend to say that one of the best ways the city of Portland could reestablish good faith is to, before X date, how about during Women's History Month, if not during Black History Month, have a plan for citizen oversight that doesn't bring in a bunch of neophytes, but retains Tom Steenson, Mirlani, Dr. Silver, and the other participants, so that the people's side, which you're on, has a team of familiar and experienced people exposed to this in the name of equity and fairness, because we know the city's attorney's office has that, and the police department has some people who've been working on this, and they're not going to come up with a bunch of new people. So if you feel, I know some parts of your work with the city are confidential as you try and hammer things out, but if you could speak to the situation with the Ninth Circuit, if there's any kind of timeline expectancy about when, and if you intend to immediately upon resolution of that, hit up Judge Simon again to get back to work. Thank you.
So I can answer as to the Ninth Circuit to the degree that I know, which is that we aren't apprised of which panel of judges get assigned. But if there is oral argument in any particular case, it is a panel of 3 judges. You are correct about that. But prior to that decision even being made, the Ninth Circuit goes through a screening process where they screen cases and determine whether or not a case is suitable for mediation. And so we have not even heard back from the Ninth Circuit in any capacity at this point as to whether or not the case has been screened, if it has been screened, whether or not it's been referred to mediation. So I'm in the dark just as much as you are as to where they are at in that process. But that is all court of public record as well, and all that information can be found on the Ninth Circuit's PACER site, yes.
Okay, so thank you for all of this great feedback. Katie, I wanted to clarify something with you. The real problem with the city, well, I'll give an example of A and B. Say A is a group with authority, B is another group with no authority. The city is the A group. They're the ones who have the authority. Nobody's punishing them, they're excusing everybody, and they are the ones who have the authority. That's a conflict of interest, and I want to clarify that's where the problem lies. So it's the city has a history with politicians in the city being, kind of fraternizing with the police. There's a lot of backdoor deals going there, a lot of problems. And that's really, I want to clarify, it's the role of the city. It doesn't matter if the DOJ comes in and says, or the community comes in and says, the city needs to do this. The city really has to be willing to accept responsibility and that they are at fault. And thus far, that hasn't happened. We have to keep pressuring them. And so I really want to clarify the city's role in that.
I think Ann wanted to say something.
Any more? Oh, yes. Ann, go ahead.
Which end?
And I'm so sorry I overlooked you.
That's okay. No problem. I appreciate this exchange, and I appreciate having a little more clarity about what's going on and where the issues lie. But thinking a little outside of the box, Adrian, I'm wondering, can you see a way, you and Brian, Jonas, whichever one of your colleagues, you've been here, you continue to show up, as you point out, even when the city doesn't show up. And can you see a way to continue this work with this board, with your presence, and to be able to hear from all of us while we're sitting, waiting? I mean, is there anything that says that we all couldn't continue, including you, to meet on a regular basis?
So What I would say to that is that I definitely encourage everyone to continue to be involved and to provide feedback. We have actually on our staff a community outreach specialist, Jacqueline Weiner, and she is someone who was specifically hired for this purpose to help continue to facilitate this process, not just here in Portland, but throughout the country. And so we do encourage continued communication. I can tell you, she keeps us up to speed on everybody's emails that come to her. We never miss one that I'm aware of. I mean, I see them. I got 3 of them this morning from her. So I would, yes, continue to encourage you to provide us information. And in regards to meeting with us, as you know, Anne, we are definitely interested in continuing to hear from citizens about what's going on, whether or not this was an issue of compliance or not.
Right.
As our role as a monitor, we have continued to be interested in what the public is seeing and dealing with, and we will continue to fulfill that role.
Well, can you see yourselves sitting down once a month? Because I think this back and forth is important for understanding what is happening in this moment.
Right, and I think it's going to be important for the city to know that that is your request. I mean, and I'm not saying that you should provide this. I mean, I think it would be good to tell the city that, but we will share with the city that you are asking us to do that, because that to me is a cry of desperation.
Oh yeah.
We are, while I live here, we DOJ are here temporarily as we see these reforms continue to be imposed.
Right.
But it is so important for the city and the community to be able to bridge this gap of trust to continue any success going forward past DOJ pulling out and saying, yes, the city has substantially complied. I'm not saying when that will happen. I'm not saying if that would happen, but that is the goal of the agreement, right? Is
Of course,
for DOJ to
of course.
finally be able to not be here at this seat.
Right.
That it be something that the community and the city and PPB are involved with. I mean, that was the preamble to Section 9, right there, is that was the intent. So we would be very leery of continuing to it only being a DOJ voice you're speaking to, because that's not setting anyone up for sustainability in the long run.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that as a long-term solution, but as things stand right now, I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Because I think that if this community loses faith, I think there's a lot of faith been lost with the city. And I think we don't want to get to a place where my coming to see you, however many years ago it was, to say, I think there's a problem here. Please, please, could you look at what we found? Could you please, please take this seriously? We don't want to be back in that place. We don't want to be back in that place. We don't want to continue to be in that place. But I think we've got to maintain at least this, because we don't have it with the city, and we need to have it with the city. But if we don't, if our desperation isn't heard, I think that we'll be in more serious trouble, and we'll be talking about more lost lives. I think it's as simple as that. And I think one of the roles that the DOJ can play in all of this, and especially because you get to talk to them behind the closed doors, is what the city must do to reestablish itself with the community. What are those things that they need to do to build trust? And when that's happened, you can leave, and you want to leave. But until then, somebody, and I think it's got to be the DOJ right now, because that's where we started.
Well, I definitely appreciate that idea, and that we will, you have my commitment that we will discuss it, and I will bring it up to the team, and I really appreciate your willingness to address that.
Thank you, thank you. And I will continue to address it with the mayor. I didn't get to speak tonight, we ran out of time. I did hand him what I came prepared to say tonight, and part of it has to do with exactly what we're talking about. And I'm not gonna let him off the hook on that, because I think he's up for this. And I think we need to take advantage of the fact that he is up for it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'd like to pass it to Keith, but before I do that, I would like to say, would the two gentlemen standing by the door, could you please leave? I feel like we're being very supervised right now and targeted. This is a very safe space, and I want people to be comfortable and free to support community rights and different perspectives. If you wouldn't mind, please stepping out and respect the space. Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
We have no problem going out. We will absolutely do that, but know that we are here by request and order of the auditor. We're not just arbitrarily here. We got no problem stepping out. Okay?
Yes, understood. It is, yes, it's our meeting, and I thank you. Yes, Keith.
I think that there's actually more going on here than just meets the eye, and I think that, you know, you guys actually should be issuing RICO law indictments against the city and against all these politicians and city officials that are colluding to sabotage COAB and to make this a totally ineffective process. And I'd like to see the DOJ do a FOIA request to see all the internal emails amongst anyone involved with the city, any city attorneys, any city officials, any police, any COCL members, go through all the stuff, do a FOIA request, and I'm sure you'll probably see that there's a criminal conspiracy to sabotage COAB, and then respond appropriately and issue RICO law indictments, because this is a criminal conspiracy going on to sabotage this DOJ process. So, you know, I know that the DOJ supposedly takes investigations seriously and their work. So if you have city officials and police and all these different people colluding to destroy this process, then obviously they're taking part in a criminal conspiracy. This has cost a lot of money to do, and it's taken a lot of hours of time from the community, all the people that have volunteered, and the city is intentionally sabotaging the process, and that is criminal, and they need to be charged criminally. Amanda Fritz, all of them. Charlie Hales, while he's off in his sailboat, you know, I'm sure you can find someone to serve him an indictment or whatever, but, you know, you really need to look into this and see that it is a criminal conspiracy to destroy and sabotage COAB.
Even Trump and Sessions will support your seizing a sailboat from a Democrat.
So are you gonna vote on the gang affiliate list tonight?
Okay, so I see a lot of hands raised right now. I'm trying to be fair for everyone. I believe Calais has not had a chance to speak, so I would like to give Calais the opportunity to say her piece. I'm trying to share the room here.
Thank you, everybody. I would like to look forward a little bit. In September in Spokane, the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement will be holding a conference. Because of the issues that Ann Brayfield, Ted Lubin, and I raised at 2 previous national conventions, I've been asked to present, and right now my name appears on a request for proposal to present the program for the nation to look at. it's more than national, it's international. We have participants from all over the world. This group started out saying that what Portland was doing was important, and what was important about it was the community piece, P-I-E-C-E. But we all thought that it was going to be about community, P-E-A-C-E. That's what we're here for, is the piece of the community. And I began attending virtually all of the meetings of the COAB, subcommittees, executive committee meetings, and public meetings, because I became aware that there was something terribly wrong with the settlement agreement. Someone has spoken about designed to fail, and that became immediately obvious. What I want to say to everybody in this room right now is that just use logic. It is not possible for this group of citizens to fail without the city failing and the US DOJ failing. And it is also not possible for the City of Portland Police Bureau or the Portland Police Association to succeed while citizens fail. So if we could just start using some kind of common sense, some kind of logic, to understand that France isn't going to come in here and save us. Either we're going to save ourselves or we will fail ourselves, but there will be no winners. None.
All right. Yeah, over here in the corner.
Check, check. So I'm here for item number 6 on the agenda, that it doesn't seem like anybody else is here for. And so I'll give folks an opportunity for this, to finish this part of the discussion, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I know this discussion is very important. I believe that the COAB is very important. I think I actually work at the city in the Office of Equity and Human Rights. And I think that community engagement, I think this level of engagement with power, with some teeth to it, is critical. So I've sat quietly and waited, but I actually just wanted to make sure, announce myself and make sure folks know the effort that I work with, Black Male Achievement, is very interested in gang designation. In fact, we were part of the movement behind Carly Brousseau at the Oregonian and printing the list as it was, and so without names. So we'll continue to advocate for that. So I just, I'm going to step back. I don't want to take up too much space. If you all decide to take it off, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I got my voice on the record as saying I'm here for that. And I know this is hopefully not your last meeting, in fact. But I know that there may be a break right now for a little while. So I want to make sure that we weigh in as to what we think should happen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
What's your position on the
I'm not finished. I just want, sorry, Tom, I just want to say I'm not finished. And I just wanted to say we're not done. I know that they said that our term will expire on the 31st, but we're going to figure out another avenue for this. We're going to make sure that we see change happen. And I definitely want to make sure that that's said. So in regards to number 6, I'd like to give COAB an opportunity to respond. And thank you for sharing your comment. Tom, did you have something in response to his comment? Or?
Well, I'm not sure what your position is on that recommendation. It came out of a subcommittee.
I don't know what the particular recommendation from this committee is. It looks like it's to remove it. So I think I have to give a little bit of context, and then I'll tell you what we're doing and why. So Black Male Achievement is an effort that was started through community engagement. I work for the city, but really my bosses are 20 Black men who are leaders in the community. The Justice Subcommittee of Black Male Achievement identified the gang designation directive as one that it was an extreme barrier to Black men and young men in success. What we found when we did see Ms. Brazeau's report was that 68% of the folks on the list are black men. 27% are Hispanic, and then there is a small percentage of other. It is very much a list for black and brown men. So I'll talk about the process a little bit. We were able to engage directly with people who are affected by this policy and with police, but we did our strategizing and our determination of what we actually wanted to do long before we got into the room with them. We understand and recognize that if police don't have two things, violent behavior in community has root causes that go far beyond what we see in the newspapers every day. It's also something that needs to be dealt with, and at times it needs to be dealt with in an intervention sort of way, right? There's times when people actually need to sit down, they need to go somewhere, and they need to be removed from the community. Those are extreme cases. Unless someone has demonstrated violent behavior, we don't think they should be tracked in any kind of way. In fact, we think that if the police are going to use any kind of tool to track anybody that hasn't demonstrated violent behavior, they need to then be offering that person services, preventative services, because at that point, our system has recognized that there's a problem and that this person may commit a violent behavior. So rather than tagging them and bagging them 5 or 10 years later, what they need to be doing is showing the caring that's necessary to prevent that person, giving that person what they need to prevent that person from going down the path that we all identify as inevitable. So what we did was, through a very intensive work group effort, we designed a draft directive that includes, we understand that police will continue to track violent behavior, and they have a lot of those tools and those means through parole and probation. So we accept that and understand that. But where folks, first off, to even identify someone as a gang affiliate, that's a decision that should happen at a community level. Our proposed directive gives an opportunity for a panel of community members, very similar to a program called the GIFT program right now, has an opportunity to look at other younger community members and say, there may be an issue here. This young person may need some services, and then refer that person to those services with no requirement that they then receive those services. Just these are available. There's an opportunity here. No carrot and stick, none of that. There's just an opportunity available here. The reality is, if we're doing that and we're successful with a few, others will find out. And those who are ready to move into another place in their life will move into another place in their life. We've been at this for about 1.5 years. What I'm asking from this committee today is, I know you haven't seen our draft, but I would like to present it to you, have an opportunity for BMA, for our subcommittee to present it to you in its full form. Discuss it. If there are disagreements with it, you all have an opportunity to weigh in on that. And in the alternative, and then actually for you all to approve that as what you send. And we will be we're continuing to engage right now with PPB on getting that across the finish line. Coincidentally, it all kind of fell apart at the point that Assistant Chief Modica was demoted. And then coincidentally, it was all picked back up when Carly Brazeau printed her report. So just noting that on the record. But in the alternative, so I'd like to present that as an opportunity to work together with the COAB. But in the alternative, I know you all have strategies and there are intentions behind what you're doing as well. So if you in the alternative, I would like for you all to vote to eliminate the gang directive, or the gang designation directive, because I believe that will put the right kind of pressure on PPB. And at the end of the day, we would rather see it eliminated than have nothing happen with it. So that's my full presentation.
Thank you, thank you. That's great feedback. And I just wanted to step in. I wanted to give COAB an opportunity to respond. Anyone? Rochelle?
This issue came up at our November Accountability Data Systems Use Force Subcommittee, Compliance Subcommittee. And it was not on the agenda that we were using that evening. It came up because there was an article in the paper, in the Oregonian, I believe, maybe Maxine wrote it.
That was Carly Brousseau. That was
Okay.
the
All right.
report.
So it came to our attention that way. I brought the article to our subcommittee. Mr. Steenson wasn't there that night, and so I was chairing the subcommittee, so I got to push my own agenda in. And the committee unanimously was incensed at what the Portland police were doing with that gang affiliation list. For a variety of reasons, you quoted the statistics. This is clearly a case of profiling, which my understanding, if I were to talk to the chief of police, he would tell me that Portland police don't do. And I don't understand how they can not be doing it and be clearly doing it at the same time.
Well, just go, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay,
I apologize.
let me just finish quickly. In addition to the profiling aspect of it, there was no way for any individual to tell if they were on the list or they weren't on the list, except if they somehow went to the North Precinct and said, can you tell me if I'm on the list or not? Then they would be told if they were on the list, but let's say they said, oh, no, you're not on the list, but by the time you walk out the door, they could put you on the list because there was no system, no reasoning, no anything, at least that was transparent.
Right.
So nobody knows if it has to do with, besides the color of your skin, the color of your clothes, whether you're wearing your hair like you're wearing it or you're wearing it like I'm wearing it. I mean, there was nothing transparent to tell how you got on the list or how you got off the list or how many times you were on the list or how many times you got off the list and what the police department and the people who work for the police department did with that list. Did they drive by your house 10 times? Did they look at you askance? What did they did? The whole thing was so obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how we were overwhelmingly upset by this article that was in the paper. And the committee unanimously voted to put forth this recommendation that the Portland police discontinue the use of the gang affiliate list. Now, this is our first meeting because of all the weather and the disruptions and stuff. Since that subcommittee meeting, this is, as far as I know, our last meeting. So either we vote on it now or we may never vote on it. It's my understanding that under our new rules, we have a sufficient number of people here to make a quorum and we can vote on it now. So
The majority, yes.
I am making a motion. First I'll make a motion that we put forward a recommendation to have the Portland Police discontinue the use of their gang affiliate list and prove that they have done it.
Second.
Secondly, if some group, if some group of the committee, of this committee or some other form of this committee continues, I also make a motion that they follow up on this recommendation.
Second.
Okay, it seems like we have two separate motions that were made. So the first motion that was made, let's vote on that in agreement to strike the gang enforcement list. And so let's go ahead and do that vote, and then we'll vote on the other one quickly. If that's my understanding of parliamentary procedure, is that was two separate motions, or do we want to have any discussion about that?
No, so.
Closed discussion? Okay, let's move to a vote. Aye.
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 Aye. V, any votes from V? Amy? Mandy?
Haven't heard from her yet.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. Just let me know whenever you get it. Okay, moving on to the second motion, which was regarding if by chance there's some similar body to COAB, hopefully COAB will continue in some capacity, but we would require that body to follow up and request that the PPB prove that they have removed this gang enforcement list, so gang affiliate list. All right, moving to a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Okay, aye. All right.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, sir, for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for raising the issue. Point of note, real quick, there was the following up with our group and our recommendations that didn't make it into your motion.
It didn't, but if we continue or somebody continues, please bring that to that
Will
group.
do, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
We don't need
We passed. We haven't said we adjourned. I'm still here. So thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you for supporting us, and thank you for your attendance and your very much valued feedback. And this is not over. Mandy, did V respond? Okay, 5-minute break.
Rico and